Historic District Commission meeting. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping issues, and then we'll go ahead and get started. If you are not speaking, if you would please keep yourself muted, that would be helpful for background noise. And to the members of the public who are here, welcome. There will be a chance for you all to speak, but please wait until the commission opens the public hearing portion of the meeting, and then you can speak one at a time. And also to the commissioners who are here, let's make an effort to speak one at a time so we have clarity and Karen is able to record our meeting. So for each application, I will read it, and then I will ask the applicant to present their project. Then we will invite members of the public to speak. And after that, we will close the public hearing so that the commissioners can discuss. And I will ask each commissioner if they have questions or concerns or comments one by one. So I'm going to start with a roll call. My name is Marguerite Carnell. I'm the chair of the commission. And who else do we have with us tonight?
Julie Carmelick.
Heather Getz.
Diane Mead.
Great, thank you. So the first application that we have this evening is continued from last month. It is application 20-03 of Aaron Rosenstein and Michael Kelly, owner applicant, for a certificate of appropriateness for the installation of a fence on the property located at 105 East Weatog Street. So I'd like to open it up for the applicant to review the progress since last month.
Hi, so we're looking to now put up a 6-foot spruce stockade wood fence that will go in the backyard of our house with a gate on the left, so we're able to enter that way. Again, like we said last month, we have 2 dogs and we need the 6-foot fence so they're able to run around and are protected from other animals that we've seen in our backyard since moving here, as well as other neighborhood dogs that have made their way to our backyard. They have hopped fences before, so with this height, it would be impossible for them to do so. For this month, we provided pictures of exactly what the fence will look like, where it's going on each side of the house, as well as the backyard. It's just been difficult, obviously, to walk the dogs and not feeling protected in our own backyard with them. So we tried to provide as much information as possible of how the fence is going to look, where it's going to go, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. So if I'm reading this plan right, on the north side of the house, the fence will begin at the northwest corner and continue back 90 feet. And then 75 feet toward the south, and then turn, and then it will connect back up, and there'll be about, I'm not quite sure how many, about 10 feet perhaps of the fence visible at the southwest corner of the house. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. And it's a 6-foot stockade fence and unpainted. Is that right also?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'll ask the commissioners if they have questions, comments about this application. Diane, how about you?
Sorry. The only thing I noticed is there have been a lot of trees taken down, I think maybe by the next door neighbor. Is that correct? Does that affect in any way the placement of this fence?
No, it doesn't. And yeah, it was by the neighbor.
I'm sorry?
Yes, it was done by the neighbor, but it will not affect where the fence is.
Okay.
No other questions?
Heather, how about you? Heather, I think you might be on mute.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay. And Julie?
Nope, I'm all set. I do appreciate the additional information, but otherwise I think that helps answer all my questions.
Okay. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak about this application? Mark? I think you're on mute, Mark.
Yay, I'm on unmute now. Hello,
Great,
everybody.
we can hear you.
Nice to see all my neighbors. Haven't seen you all in a while. Our new neighbors have done absolutely amazing things with sprucing up the yard and making it look great. I am fully in favor of this fence that they want to put in. Their dogs are great. The fence is great. I couldn't say more about it. Positive, positive, positive.
Great, thank you very much for that comment. Is there anybody else who would like to speak about this application? I can't necessarily see you, so please speak up if you do. Okay, well, that being the case, if there aren't any additional questions, I'm going to close the public hearing and open to discussion for the commissioners. I guess I need to make a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I don't have any particular concerns about this application. I'm really, really happy that that the applicant has decided to go with a wood fence instead of vinyl. I like the unfinished, unpainted wood. I think is appropriate. And there'll be minimal visibility, at least in my mind, from the street. And so I am in support of this application. So I'd like to, if there's no further discussion that we need to have, anybody?
Nope.
Okay, we're good. All right, so I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're having a technical issue. Our meeting is not being broadcast right now on SCTV.
All right, so let's get back to application 20-03 for 105 East Weatog Street. We were about to take a vote on the application for a 6-foot-high fence, and I would like to make a motion to approve this application as submitted, a 6-foot-high wood stockade fence, unpainted. Installed per the plan that was submitted with the application.
Second.
All in favor? And I'll call on the commissioners one by one. Diane?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Julie? Julie, are you on mute? Julie, you're on mute. Are you in favor of this application?
Yes, I'm sorry. I totally lost the screen. I am in favor. Thank you.
All right, great.
Communications
And,
to find us again.
Oh, goodness, no problem. All right, and I as well. So the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so turning now to the next application, 20-02 Simsbury Land Trust, owner applicant, for a certificate of appropriateness for a gravel parking lot with paved apron to the street for a parcel located along the eastern side of East Weatog Street, approximately 815 feet from the intersection of East Weatog Street and Riverside Road. Would the applicant like to speak?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for getting together tonight for this. My name is Marjorie Winters, 111 Old Farms Road in West Simsbury. I am the Simsbury Land Trust president, and I'm here to ask for permission for the certificate of appropriateness for a parking lot at our site on or what we call our Tanager Hill property. If there's anything we've learned from the pandemic and the shutdown, is we've learned that everyone really likes the open space in Simsbury and the trails. And from the first time that the lockdown started, we had heavy use on this trail. It does get a lot of runoff from the hillside behind it. And you can see from the pictures, we have an erosion problem. In the spring, there needs to be work done on this parking lot. And we're just asking for something that everyone else on the street has, the paved apron and the gravel. One of the problems is of this site, because of the excess water, in the spring when the ground is frozen, you do get a lot of runoff over the road, which creates an icing problem. And also we've had erosion of sediment into the road, and that is into the neighbor's yard, and that has been unacceptable. So we want to stabilize the site so that we don't end up having our site wash into other people's yards. It is a dangerous road. Parking along the road is not acceptable. And so we need to get people off the road. There are other parking areas farther away, but that does require the pedestrians to walk along the road, and that is not a good situation. This is really the crown jewel in the Simsbury Land Trust properties. And one of the things for the Simsbury Land Trust properties is that we allow public access to the trails. The easiest way would be with the parking lot. We do hope to buffer the view shed of the parking lot. We have cleared out the invasive plants that were choking the cedar trees there, but we'd like to plant some nice native plants along the roadside, the hillside, to block the view of the cars. But it is an elevated site, so you're not really that aware of the road of the cars as you're there. One of the things we're also looking into is doing a French drain to minimize the water on this parking lot. So we're hoping to spend as little as we can and to do it as effectively as we can and preserve the setting. So the French drain may be enough that we don't need the full gravel parking lot. It may divert the water around the parking lot. We will be seeking a permit from the inland wetlands for that. Let's see what else. This was not included in the application. I understand if I'd need to do another one. One of the problems we've had at that site, on the southern end, there is a slight hill, and we've had a couple of joyriders making tracks up and down the hill, which increases the erosion. We would like to put in a cedar split rail two-rail fence along the edge of the parking lot on that southern side to keep people from going up the hill and making a mess of the site. And I think, yeah, that's about it. And what we've noticed that, everyone else along the street has that. I would think that Simsbury Land Trust as a property owner would have the same right that everybody else has along the street to have a parking lot. I don't think our parking lot would be any greater in size than other people's driveways along the street. And it does allow people to get access to a beautiful piece of property, which is part of Simsbury's history.
Thank you. There was a similar application that was made 4 years ago for a parking lot at this location, which was modified to just a gravel apron, as I'm sure you're aware. And so I'd like to if you could talk about whether the location of this entrance has changed. And I ask because the copy of the plan that was included in the application is very difficult to read. It's not the highest quality PDF, and I'm having some trouble I'm having a lot of trouble actually making out the details.
Yeah, and I know we had the same problem at the inland wetlands last night, or the other night. The entranceway would be on the side, the northern side. It would be a paved apron, 14-foot apron. What we found was, I think gravel had been put down at the exit of the end of the driveway, but it was still being tracked into the road. There's just so much water coming off that hillside that we really need a paved, like all the other driveways for every other house on that street. They have a paved, 14-foot paved thing that just prevents the tracking out of mud onto the street.
Right. So is the apron in the same location as it was 4 years ago, or has it shifted?
I'm not sure what it was. I think this is the same. Yes, I think it is. So it's just a 14-foot apron. It's up towards Lucy Brook.
Okay. And the parking lot contains 10 spaces?
Yes, I mean that's about on a busy day that might be might be full. We had a lot of people very interested in walking. It's a big property, so a lot of people want to walk there, and they can be well spaced out. So to keep the cars off the road, and of course, in the wintertime, if it's not going to be plowed, it's really only during the hiking season that they would.
Right. So I'm just reviewing the plan again, and it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like it's 10 spaces plus one handicap space.
I would imagine it'd be required. They're not going to be marked, so it's a gravel parking lot. But gravel, yes. So that would be
okay. And the handicap space, again, I'm trying to make out this plan. It looks like the handicap space would be paved. No,
that is not our plan. It would just be. We're hoping that we don't have to gravel it. We're hoping that if we put the French drain in, it would be unnecessary to gravel it. If we need to, because of the roads, we want to have the ability to do that. So that's why we're coming forward for that. But if we can keep it as a field, great. It doesn't look like it. We will be able to keep it as a field given the amount of traffic that's on that particular property and given the wetness of it in the spring. However, should the French drain work, we would like to be able to put in the gravel, but we would not pave it.
Okay. So as I understand it, with the application that's in front of us tonight, though, the application is for a gravel parking lot and it with a paved apron.
Yes.
And I'm confused because, as I said, the plan appears to indicate that the handicap space would be paved, and I thought that was a requirement.
Well, if it's required by the state, and I'm not sure, Mike might be able to.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
ADA will require that handicap parking spot or accessible parking space is paved.
All right, so that would be that one spot.
Okay. And Mike, would it would also be noted? It would have appropriate signage and striping on the pavement and so forth.
That's correct. Because under ADA, they will have to delineate it and have the proper signage. The other thing, just to get back to, is the paved apron under the street use regs or highway standards. Aprons are for the first 14 feet off of the public road are supposed to be paved.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So before we open it to the public, I would just like to see if the commissioners have questions and comments. Diane?
Okay, I'm just trying to confirm what it is we're looking at here, Marjorie. So the idea is we pave the access, the 14-foot. You're going to put in the drainage, and you'll have to put in the handicap plot, and that's the best case scenario.
That's the best case scenario, yeah.
Okay, but the whole application includes, if need be, that then we would put gravel in.
Yes.
But what we're trying to do, I know one of the concerns last time was gravel and water going down, across the street, like across to.
That's what we've got now. We've got gravel and well, the little bit that was put at the end of I'm not sure who put that in, but there is material going across the street as it is. That's why we have the paved apron. We don't have that paved apron at the moment. So the idea is by the time you get the 14-foot, you've lost a lot of that before you get onto the road.
Sure. Okay.
So we're hoping to be good neighbors by putting, so we don't have the icing of the road and we don't have the gravel going across the road or the mud going across the road.
The drainage has always been a big problem over there. So that is a concern. Okay. So I think I understand now the total.
Okay,
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
thank you. Heather, do you have questions, comments?
I'm wondering, is there any additional signage that's going to be added at the entry point, or will it only be, the only change be the paved apron?
No, I mean, we're just up. We have a kiosk at the head of the trail, or we would, I mean, that's the only place we put signage. We wouldn't put it at the end of the road. And if we did, we'd have to go for additional permitting.
So there would be no signage to indicate that there would be parking at this location.
No, that we generally don't do that at the Simsbury Land Trust. We do have maps that we give out with maps on our website that tell hikers where to go. And no one's had a problem finding this parking lot. Finding.
Julie, questions, comments?
Yeah, thanks, Marguerite. I want to start off by saying I don't have any kind of philosophical objection to this plan. I think for lots of reasons it makes practical sense and it's a good thing to do. But I was on, most of us here were on the commission in 2016 when this was submitted, and I just, for the purposes of clarification, want to make sure that I understand the current project as proposed. In 2016, there was a plan that included the removal of some trees for the purposes of the apron. And so if we're not talking about the removal of trees at this point, then that says to me that maybe the site has changed.
No, there is. I think there are maybe 1 or 2 trees that may need to be removed for the entranceway. This is essentially the same plan. What we're bringing forward is as you can see in the pictures, the current plan is not working. We need to be able to do on our property what everybody else does on their property.
And again, no objection. Yeah. I'm just trying to get to the final.
So there may be some trees, but we will be planting additional trees to buffer the view of the parking lot.
Okay.
Not trees, shrubs.
And then my other question is with regards to the timing of the work. In 2016, we were just looking at like a phase 1 of this operation. Are we now talking about kind of doing it all at once?
No. I mean, money is always a big object with a nonprofit organization. We do have a quote for the French drain. We're looking to see how that affects the site before we go full. We'd like to do the paved apron, and obviously we have to put in a paved handicapped accessibility area. If we don't need the gravel, that would be fantastic. But we do need that paved apron, and we'll be looking into doing the French drain to get to solve the water issue at that site.
So really, all we're approving at this point is a paved 14-foot apron.
We're hoping not, because we have to go before inland wetlands. We want. I should tell you, all right, we'd like to do the whole thing, but we don't know that we have the money. If we'd like to do the whole thing, it would make a better parking lot. We will be doing it in stages. But at this point, we'd like the approval for the whole thing, and then we can decide whether we go full, at our, given the finances of it, which part we go with. If we find that the French drain is not working, we would then put in the gravel.
So,
like every other driveway along that road.
Yeah. So just for procedural purposes, then,
for the full thing.
So that would include the paved apron, the French drain.
No, do you oversee the French drain too?
Well,
it's not visible. It's not. It's an underground thing.
We're just trying to understand the process.
Yeah. For the French drain, we need approval from inland wetlands.
Okay, but the project. So the overall project would be the apron, the French drain.
Yeah.
Whether we have approval rights over that or not, but then a gravel driveway and a paved accessible parking spot that is paved, striped, and
that's what we seek approval for.
And you mentioned a cedar fence. Are you looking for approval for that as well?
If I can tack it on, otherwise I'll come back.
And I guess I couldn't quite follow where that would be located.
It's at the southern end of the parking lot. There's a little hill that goes up to the neighbors on the south, and that's where we've had cars driving up and making great ruts and causing more erosion. So it's just a way of and on the other side, We'll have plants. But it's a fence to keep the cars from going off, so that it would limit the parking lot to those 10 spots. Right now, people are parking everywhere they want. If we have a parking lot, that will limit the number of cars that go into that site.
For clarification on that, is that abuts Tia Battiston? That's your property? Yeah.
That's correct.
Correct, yes.
Okay. I'm trying to visualize. And then just one other question in terms of the timing. I know, Marjorie, you're talking about staging this out, but Mike, don't we have a 1-year provision on applications? If I'm not.
Yep, the certificate of appropriateness is valid for 1 year.
All right. Well, if we don't get it done this year, we'll be coming back. I mean, if we do the French drain and we find that it's been a wet summer, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a wet summer. If we get a very wet season and it just doesn't work, we would come back for the same application for another certificate of appropriateness.
Just that you understand, Marjorie, that there is a finite to the schedule.
Yeah.
Okay. Marjorie, I don't see that we could approve a fence this evening because we need to know what it looks like and where it would be located.
Well, I can come back with that.
Okay. And I'm really having trouble feeling comfortable even voting on this plan tonight, being the quality of the
I'm
print.
surprised about that because I sent in a plan that was readable, so I'm not sure where the problem came in.
Mike, or do you have any thoughts on that? It's very hard to read the PDF that was uploaded. I did ask Karen if we could have a better quality, and she said this was as good as she could get. So,
yeah, I'm going to try something right now.
Okay.
While the commission's discussing this.
Okay. Commissioners, any further questions, comments for the applicant before we open it to the public for comment? Okay. That being the case, if folks could take turns and say their name and their address, and I'll be writing it down as fast as I can, and then we'll call on you in turn so that everybody has a chance to speak. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. Karen, do you need folks to spell their names? Karen is asking that people actually spell their last name so she can record it properly.
Well, in the absence of someone else starting, I guess we will.
Okay.
Don and Katie McQuattie, spelled M-A-C, capital Q-U-A-T-T-I-E. And we are at 133 East Weetag.
Okay. Don and Katie McQuattie at 133 East Weetag. Okay. Next.
My name is Jim Miller. 22. Oh, my last name is spelled M-I-L-L-E-R.
Okay.
I live at 22 Talcott Mountain Road, and I abut the property.
Okay. And next.
Greg Tia Battiston. It's Battiston. And we're currently at 255 Mountain Road in West Hartford, Connecticut.
And you're abutting property, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
At 130 East Weetag.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that address?
130 East
Okay.
Weetag.
Great, thank you. Okay, next.
Hi there. I'm Art House, and Rita Jepson, my wife. We're House is House, and we're at 137 East Weetag Street. we are right across the street from the property.
Thank you.
Mark Lubetkin, Lubetkin, 107 East Weetag.
107. Thank you, Mark. Next. Do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak? Please state your name. Hello? I'm sorry, if you're a member of the public who would like to speak, can you speak up, please? I'm not sure if I'm missing somebody there or not. Okay, well, let's start with these five. So Don and Katie McQuaddy at 133 East Weetag. Please go ahead.
Yeah, well, can I lead off and then we'll jump in? So a couple of questions, and I would start off, Tia and Greg, welcome to the neighborhood. House looks great. Can't wait to meet you live. So again, welcome. You've referenced a plan a number of times. Is that available to us or no?
Mike, you want to take that?
Yes, yes, it is. It is available, and it should have been. It's uploaded with the packet material online.
Okay, my apologies if I did not do that. So we'll take a look. Thank you. So as Art said, you know, they are right across the street, as are we. And I will tell you, the runoff on a heavy rainy day, you know, we could do a screen share and show you some of the video. It's pretty bad. And with the apron, it's going to be just as bad. That's not going to stop it. So there has to be some sort of storm drain or a French drain, without a doubt. And in the wintertime, it's just plain hazardous. The kids are out there on the bus, you know, and occasionally on the bus, they often get driven, but that's you know, that's kind of an issue. Let me jump around a little bit, took a bunch of notes here. If there's an ADA requirement, does that require that the parking lot needs lighting?
Mike, can you speak to that? Does the parking lot require lighting?
No. The ADA is just going to be for the parking spot. No lighting's required under ADA.
Okay. The spaces, you said you want to limit it to 10 spaces. How would you regulate that? We've seen north of 24 cars there. I say north of it. We counted 24 one day.
Don, why don't this is how we're going to handle this for all members of the public. Any questions you have are to the board, not to the applicant. Okay, the applicant will respond to the public after everyone has a chance to speak.
Okay, so that's a question. You know, we are property owners as well, and we don't have parking lots. So that comparison, I would just take issue with that. The joyriders that were mentioned, they've done donuts out there. So as a teenager, you know what a donut is. You go into someone's yard and you rip it up. That's what they were doing. Maybe they were mountain bikers. I don't know. Didn't hear the mountain bikers, but we certainly heard the joyriders doing donuts. There is a sign there now on the street. So I just wanted to correct the record on that. There is a kiosk. And when I saw the kiosk glass, it had a P for parking lot right where that parking lot is. That kiosk has that parking lot sign. Online, you only have one parking lot, and it's down by the intersection. But on the kiosk, if that's still the case, when I met the former president up there, there was a parking lot sign on the kiosk, and there is a sign on the street right now. We were told in 2016 that this was going to be strictly seasonal. That is absolutely not the case. And it seems to be no control for it at all. The wetlands, with the French drain, I don't know how that works, and shame on me, I'll have to figure that out if there has to be a wetlands permit, because if you're having 20 plus cars right next to the Lucy Brook, as you pointed out, let me refer that to the board, as the applicant pointed out, it's a raised elevation and the water will drain right off into Lucy Brook. And if you have 20 plus cars there, does that require some type of environmental impact study? I don't know. That's a question to the board. How will you limit the parking? I guess I already asked that. And I think I'm done. So
I do have a few other comments. So this is a residential area, and as my husband just said, no one is monitoring the number of cars using the space. The land trust did put a sign on one of the trees stating that it's only open for hiking sunrise to sunset, but we regularly see people early morning and late into the evening, and often with dogs off leash. A parking lot is just not appropriate in the historic district. And I'm a stay-at-home, so I have seen at least 24 cars on several occasions, and that's like 3 times as many people that are parking down at the Flower Bridge, which is a really dedicated park. Parking on the road obviously is not an option because it is such a dangerous road. So we are directly across from the entrance, and that space is at a slightly higher elevation than our side of the street, which is all the runoff problem whenever it rains or snows, and it's flooding into our lawn, and you can see automobile fuel in the water that comes running off. So that there should be an environmental study. It's obviously destroying our lawn, but that's also, as everybody's mentioned, is also flowing into Lucy Brook. And we realize that the land trust was gifted this, and it's a lovely space, but their wishes shouldn't supersede the rights of the residents that live on the street in this neighborhood.
One very, very last thing. We're fans of the land trust. Don't get us wrong. We contributed in the past. It's been a while, but we've contributed in the past. In terms of just being kind of citizens of Simsbury. In past years, I've been on, 2 nonprofit boards as well. We're big fans of the community. This has some issues with us.
Margaret, this is Laird Mortimer. You hearing me? M-O-R-T.
Yes, Laird, I hear you now.
I am a member of the Simsbury Land Trust, and we've given land up at the top of this trail, which ends right at the parking area, and I object to the entrance into a gravel parking lot. Terry said,
Laird, excuse me, please. We've got other folks who are in line to speak. So if you could please hold your comments until they've had a chance, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So next is Jim Miller.
Let's see.
Jim, you're on mute.
How's that?
That's better. Thank you.
Twice now I've gotten a little indication that I've been muted by the host. I'm not sure how this is happening. But at any rate, since we live on Connecticut Mountain Road, my wife and I travel East Weetoft Street quite frequently. I cannot overemphasize the difficulties of the safety difficulties on the road because of its normal configuration, and how people parking here and there and not using the lot put themselves and others at jeopardy. I've seen bicycles head off into the bushes. I have seen doors almost get knocked off. Maybe I travel up and down there more than I'd like to, but there's definite hazards, and one that I was kind of glad to see mitigated is when the McQuaddies lawn service comes, they park out in the road, and that gets, pretty, that aggravates the safety situation. I was rather glad when they started using the parking lot, and would hope that they would continue using the parking lot to keep the equipment off the road, thereby leaving it at its full width. The changes to the property to put in a reasonable parking lot that Marjorie suggested are, I think, if I interpret her correctly, of a nature that the land trust would like to have as many people as possible happy, would like to proceed with the least invasive changes so that one can develop a parking lot that in the end is respectful of the area and yet, and I'm very confident that reasonable drainage design and implementation will keep the dirt off the road. And I think part of the property slopes and contours is not obvious to anybody unless you go in and look at it as well. But there are some places for instance, like a natural rain pond, which would currently be not far where the entry currently exists. And this properly implemented with French drain, or there are other names for types of water diversions that would go a long way toward approved methods of actually keeping siltation, runoff, and whatever else off the road. The land has been absorbing this water pretty well since the town came along and put drains along the east side of that road, and that certainly has limited the amount of runoff and icing and so on that's along the road. So that is one thing that I should say that those comments boil down to the simple fact that it is a matter of hazard to people who will park somewhere and use the land, and hazard to the people and the people that use that road versus having a parking lot. And I would hope that for the general good, people accept that a reasonable, well-developed parking lot that is of as limited as possible the impact on the area, but is still effective. I would hope that people would see that we need to certainly jury on the side of safety. So that is one point. It's going to be a parking lot. It can be done so the drainage is limited. I'm confident that the land trust will do it in that manner. And so that is one point. Another thing is relative to signage, I would hope that the commission would be a little bit flexible there. For instance, people had used that parking lot whenever when it was open, and yes, the surface is muddy. Okay, there has been a small amount of runoff because the water, which can easily be redirected, had been directed right out into where it plugged up the gravel right now, and then flowed out onto the road and brought silt with it. Things really got carried away when perhaps the McQuaddies saw donuts, but there's a lot of tree work going on. And when that parking lot was quite wet, a couple of people from some of the tree work around here, I don't know if they were having their lunch there or whatever, but those were some really good ruts. And the ruts, of course, were a natural drainage channel that arose and exacerbated the problem. So one thing that may be worth considering is signage asking for a limitation on the size of the on the size of vehicles that use it. To perhaps the largest type of vehicle would be, for instance, what the McQuaddy's lawn service uses. There's some mitigating circumstances that where a sign might be to everyone's advantage. Another thing that I want to address is I am unaware until Mr. McQuaddy mentioned that the Land Trust website or whatever indicates that there's parking up by the north intersection between Riverside, East Weetog, and I think it then becomes Terry's Plain as well. And I'm not so certain that is intended for the Land Trust. I suspicion that may be for the canoe put in. Okay, I don't know that the parking indication was put in at the time when the Land Trust got the property. If I recollect properly, it's been there long before that. We've been here 36 years. Okay, so since we travel that area commonly, it certainly seems like that may have been there for the canoe put in. And again, I want to emphasize that when people park there, which they have when there was no other parking available, coming along the road is a good way to lose those people. And again, I hope that we say, people are going to use it. It's available, and safety is a primary issue. Another point that I would like to address is that I've touched on already, is that there's nothing new about how well-executed engineering can mitigate drainage problems in pieces of land like we are discussing. As a consequence, I would like forbearance and understanding on the part of not only this commission, but any other commissions that need to provide approval throughout the town on a reasonable process of approving an understanding a gravel parking lot, or, with a paved handicapped area, or perhaps less, as long as the access is available and the problems of drainage are solved. And I have every confidence that that can happen. So it may be a process in which the budget increments available through the Land Trust go hand in hand with evaluation of changes that evolve to make a very effective solution to the problem right now. I understand, as another point, that the number of cars there have been counted, and it doesn't surprise me that a fair number of people park there. I've never counted them myself. I drive by there all the time, and I would say the average, and this would be the long-term average, might be 2 or 3. Okay. From time to time, groups will contact the Land Trust and inquire if they can have a group function, and that might result in brief and somewhat controlled processes, or somewhat more intense use of the parking areas. Okay, but there have been activities in which the Land Trust has had a number of people using that land and has arranged alternate transportation. I think one time a bus or something, to take people to who were hiking there in a fairly large group over to an area where parking was more readily available for a large number of cars. Okay. So any situation in which somebody says, well, you have to limit the number of cars there, it isn't going to work. Who's going to do the limit? Okay. The land trust does not have that capability, nor does any other land trust, I suspect, although that's pure speculation on my part. So we run up against practicalities here. The land trust will, I'm certain they're a good organization, and they will do the best to be satisfactory neighbors to everybody, recognizing the land trust as a public do-gooder organization that, by taking over the Tanager Hill property, is doing a lot of good. As I said, for 37 years, my family and I have roamed that land, often seeing our good friends, the Ellsworths, before this. And I feel a little bad that the land trust bought the property. And so people are now wandering through our extended backyard. However, it's to the greater good. People are out there getting fresh air. People are out there safely walking on lovely areas. They're bird watching, going up on the pinnacle. People come from a lot of places. I strike up a conversation with fellow hikers, and I could give you a long list of places that people have come having heard about this.
So Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have a number of people who want to speak. I do appreciate your comments, and I see that you are in favor of this application. Is that fair to say?
I am not only in favor, but I feel that some of the complaints, I wish I knew a better word, that I have heard are thought of carefully, but that some are just impractical. They aren't going to happen no matter what. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. So next on our list is Greg and Tia Battison.
Hi. As members of the Land Trust and avid hikers, we love Tanager Hill so much, and we are there all the time. We understand the plight of the neighbors in the past, and we empathize with that as well. We hope there could be a win-win. Right now, we are not in objection of the proposed plan.
Anything else from the Battisons?
No. Oh,
no. Okay.
No, I mean, my main concern is the drainage. I mean, there's a water problem there
currently,
and I'd like to see that resolved, because I don't like seeing everyone parked out on the street having rope up and hay bales and caution tape and everything. That's, to me, that's more, it's not safe, but it's more of an eyesore than having a couple, 2 or 3 cars in a parking lot. But I do, and do I want a full gravel parking lot? Probably not. But I would say start with the drain and see if that solves the problem, and have a nice grass lot there. So that's kind of where we stand.
Thank you. And next we have Art House and Rita Jepson.
Hi there. I'll make a few comments, and then Rita will add to them. My main point is I think you have to manage this. I should start by saying we're also members of the Land Trust. We contribute to the project, and members of our family walk up and down the trail there and enjoy it very much. First, there really is a mud problem. Not only do you need to pave the apron, you need to pave. You have to have gravel in there. If you don't have gravel over all the parking spaces, it's going to be mud. And if there's mud, the cars won't go there, and they'll park along the street some more. So you really have to do the whole thing. And I'm talking about management. I think 10 is far too few. I mean, I agree with Don. You look over there sometimes on a nice weekend, and there are an awful lot of cars. Well, you got to manage this. There should be a sign up saying limited to X number of spaces. If the lot has X number of cars, park at the flower bridge or something. But if they don't, they'll go right out on the road. They've parked in our lawn, they park along there. It's very, very unsafe. So I guess my point is it's got to be safe. You're going to need the apron. You're going to need the full gravel because if without gravel, there'll be mud and the cars don't like to park in the mud. I'm trying to be succinct here. Rita, what do you have to add?
I'm turning on the light because I'm reading the directions. Keep going.
Okay, I think I've made my points. Yep, here's Rita. Okay, let there be light.
From my perspective, and I'm basically stay at home. It's been a long 4 years. When this was proposed in 2016, this sort of the notion of a parking lot was introduced. We asked about it, and the land trust was basically like, well, we don't have any money to do landscaping or drainage or anything. So it just became a de facto parking lot with no regulation. So we had street parking going on. We've had people in that parking lot. I witnessed one kid in a dark black Subaru with a duct tape on the back doing figure 8. Up the mountain screaming and shouting, none of my kids with flashlights. And I called the police and said, I don't know if there's distress or a party, but it's there. Okay, so it's been unregulated with respect to number of people in the parking lot, the drainage in the parking lot. We were told there'd be no money for landscaping. Just sort of forget that. I spoke with Mike Glidden around that time, and he pointed out that unless, the biggest thing would be is if there's an environmental impact. We know there is happening to the McQuaddies. There's no reason not to believe that runoff, if cars are parking up close to Lucy Brook, there isn't runoff going into the brook and affecting the bioorganisms downstream. So I think that's, in my view, is that it would be key for the commission to ask for a strong environmental study about environmental impact into Lucy Brook and down into the Farmington River, which crosses our property. Okay, down to the marshlands to the river. I worry about good faith. It was basically when we asked them to commit to landscaping, limiting number of spaces, monitoring it. We were literally told, we don't have the money, so we're not going to do it. People will park. And you're right, they found the parking lot. Jim, I'm glad you have the advantage of the hikers. We have the disadvantage of all the cars. The cars, the noise, and being unsafe. Do I feel that this trail should be accessible? Sure, but as Art said, it has to be managed, and we have to have assurance of management from the Simsbury Land Trust before I think we would sign on to any kind of agreement with the plan that we would object to a plan that doesn't have the people run choices. People run and walk and ride bikes on this street all the time. You can't say to them, don't park at a distance and walk up because it's unsafe. People are willing or free to make that. We have down that street on the edge of our property, the access to the Boy Scout trail. People park across the street, that pull off and walk up the trail. They cross the street. It's not safe, but people make those choices. People run, walk, and bicycle on the street all the time. If they have to park at a distance and walk in or arrange to be dropped off and picked up, that's on them. That's not on us. And again, I'm glad that there are hikers there. But again, the McQuaddies and I especially, I feel that, and Tia and Greg, you may find this or not, but we find that it has been 4 long years of a poorly managed space that we have basically borne the brunt of in terms of environmental issues, safety issues, noise, and, just because you bought the property, the assumption was, therefore we get to have a parking lot. Okay, but that doesn't make for good neighbors if the parking lot has just become an eyesore, a concern, noise, inconvenience, and environmental concerns as well.
Thank you, Rita, for your comments. And now Mark Lubetkin.
Am I off mute?
Yes, you are.
Hi, everybody. First, I love the land trust. I love the property. I think the parking and the parking on the street and the hay bales and the water have been an absolute disaster. And I'm so sorry to my friends and neighbors, the McQuaddies and the houses for having to deal with this. I think that the safety on the street, it's curvy, it's narrow, it's wet. I think, in my opinion, the land trust needs to close that property until such time as this is resolved because of the danger. I think it's completely inappropriate for cars to park on the neighbor's property during all this. So I think the police need to put up some do not park on the side of the road signs. To 10 cars maximum. It's a commercial property versus residential at that point. We're not talking commercial in the historic district. If you want to have a 10-car parking lot, make it nice, make it approachable, but not this half-ass shit. That just is wrong. Drainage has to be done before anything else, and it can't run into Lucy Brook and contaminate it. That's wrong, especially if you're trying to turn this property into a naturalist area where you're going to prevent dogs from hiking, which I think is ridiculous. I want to address something with the zoning influence. Mike, your predecessors, Howard Beach and Company, when I was on Parks and Rec, had recognized that this was going to be an issue 10 years ago. And they were looking at paving Riverside Road and adding parking on the north and south side of that road by the boat put in that would provide parking for the Boy Scout trail and eventually for this trail when it was under consideration, what we were going to do with it. Nothing happened with it, and it just dropped away. I know it's not your fault, Mike. You've done an amazing job, but your predecessors really screwed up and dropped the ball on that. But if there was off-site parking like that and a nice little nature trail up to the Boy Scout trail, that Boy Scout trail directly intersects the property under discussion here. You don't need parking at the entrance to this trail when you have the Boy Scout trail that gives you access to that land property. You need parking for the Boy Scout trail down by the water put in. It's dangerous to have the cars parking in the historic district on East Weetag. It's wrong. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your comments. And now we have Laird Mortimer. Laird, you are on mute. If you could unmute yourself, please. You are still muted. Oh, yeah, still muted.
Am I right?
There you go. Yep, can hear you now. Thank you.
Laird Mortimer, Mortimer, of 44 Pinnacle Mountain Road up at the top of the trail. The cars speed along this road and have come to a stop at that intersection of two upcoming roads, lots of screeching tires, a half dozen wrecks in the past year. I drive by this multiple times a day. Parking is small and tight for hikers. To get into the space allowed, parking lot will only make this intersection more crowded and accident prone for both the homeowners and the hikers parking. The construction parkers have only made it worse, but they'll be gone soon. And further up the road, there's a tight wooden bridge, which makes cars need to narrow down from speeding along. So I have no idea how the homeowners plan to access their home, but creating a jam by the turnoff of the trail is a good way to cause more accidents. I think some of the comments before me have made that point, that a lot of things come to a conclusion right there where the turnoff for the parking lot is. So I live way up at the top of the road, so this doesn't affect my house, but the trail winds by my property, and proposed parking lot has no effect on my home. Thank you.
Thank you, Laird. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
Madam Chairman, before you close the hearing, why don't I do this? Let me pull up the plans. I know everyone wanted to see more legible plans, in fairness to the public so they could see it.
Okay.
Just bear with me on this.
Yep, take your time.
So is everyone seeing this now?
Yes.
How's that? Is that, you want to zoom in on it a little further?
I'm able
If I can, hold on.
I'm able to zoom in myself, but it's just much more clear. Thank you.
Yeah. So the shaded areas, obviously the paved. This is basically the same application you saw in 2016. Obviously the difference in 2016 versus now is, as Marjorie indicated, the fact that they're asking for more and versus 2016. Remember, they reduced it as just a paved apron. Julie, your questions on trees that would be removed. There are 2 trees that are in the middle of the driveway, which I think actually don't know if they're still there, but those are identified as being, those are those 2 kind of darker stars, let's just or dashes. Those will be removed.
Yeah.
And then Marguerite, just to follow up, we've already said this, but obviously the accessible parking spot is that 15-foot wide parking stall with the hashed area to the south of it. And then what Marjorie talked about, the French drain, I'm assuming it's along the what's called for a 3-foot boulder wall, that area.
I'm not seeing that, Mike. Can you clarify, please?
Right along the tree line. Yeah, right along the tree line.
Okay.
Hey, Mike. This is Julie. I don't know if you can see me because of the shared screen, but can you?
I'm waving.
Can you pan to the key on the plan? Because I had a hard time reading the key, and I just want to make sure I understand what's going on at the site. There.
Let me.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So I see some there were some open circles on the plan, kind of curving around the drive. Are they manhole yard drains, or I'm losing it, or are they something else? See those circles?
Okay. Remember, now this is the old plan, and that they're not. Marjorie, correct me if I'm wrong if you're looking for this. So if the commission recalls back in 2016, management of the parking area was discussed. And the applicant at the time, not the current individual who's before us, said, well, we're going to put a bunch of boulders around the perimeter of the parking lot. That's how it's going to keep everyone within the parking area. So that's what those circles are.
Okay.
Marjorie, you're not looking to put those boulders there, correct?
She might be muted.
Yeah, we are looking to limit. I mean, this is the reason for having this plan. Right now, we have a big open field. Lots of cars can park in it. Our goal is to limit the parking in this particular site. And, whether it's by boulders or a fence or something, we'll come back for that. But we want to limit it so that people aren't driving off the area of the parking lot. We want to limit it to these 10 spots.
Okay. So then, I mean, most likely, as Marguerite said, we don't have information on a fence.
No.
What you have on what you have on the plan is perimeter controls of 2-foot diameter boulders.
Mm-hmm. So I would come before you again next month, hopefully, if I can get it in, or the month following, to show you where the fence would be. But it is our goal to be good neighbors, to limit the parking at this site so it's not 25 cars, and so that people can come safely. And if we have a limited parking spot that is delineated, it is much more likely that we will have we won't have the donuts. We won't have the damage that we have now. One of our problems is we've wanted to do this parking lot without the historical appropriateness certificate. We can't move forward with it. We're trying to do this so that it does not lead to a problem. One of the reasons we want to put the French drain in is if you can limit the water that's going across the parking lot, you also limit the sedimentation and any pollutants that might end up in Lucy Brook. So there's an environmental reason for doing this. What's there now does not work. And I'd also like to point out, now that we have the plan, the parking lot entrance is to the north of where the McQuaddies have their parking, have their yard, so that you would not have the drainage going down. Also, there's a drain from the north to the south, and we're hoping to berm it so that the water will not come off the yard, and it'll be kept on our site. So there are a lot of things we want to do to make it a better parking lot. The first step is this approval. By seasonal, I mean, this is not a plowed lot. So yes, whenever there is not snow, this parking lot would be used, just as the trails would be used. We would be seeking, anything we do, we would be seeking wetlands permits for that. This is a problem in all parking lots in all areas of town. The after use, the sunrise to sunset, that's a policing option. And as far as a parking lot not being appropriate in a historic district, the square footage of this parking lot would probably not be unlike some of the long driveways that we have in the area. And, you know, I would think, you know, we're going to check to see if we need the gravel. If the French drain takes care of the problem, then we can keep it that way. And again, even though from what I've heard, we had hoped to buffer the parking lot from the 4 years ago, we had hoped to buffer the parking lot from the road by plantings, but we were told that it might be a safety issue for people in the parking lot. You know, I'm not quite sure how that works because people can get attacked on the trails just as easily. You know, it's not working the way it is now. So we want to move ahead by making it work. I mean, the Land Trust is committed to making it work. It's been frustrating for us too that we couldn't get the approval so we could move forward, so we could have an appropriate solution to this problem, because it is a problem. And I think once we eliminate the water with the French drain and have the paved entrance and perhaps gravel, it will be a much better solution. It will, and the hay bales, the reason the hay bales were put up was because it was such a muddy mess. We were worried about cars getting stuck in there, and that was to mitigate the erosion of the sediment that was coming across the road. That was to trap that thing. Once the lot dried out, we also removed those hay bales. And we got criticism for having the lot open. We got criticism for having the lot closed. There was other thing as far as the website suggesting parking. We were in a tough situation this spring because it was so wet, and with the rain and the runoff and the heavy use of the trail because of COVID, it became a mess quickly, and we had to take off the website that we were encouraging people to park there when we closed the parking lot. So it's been a nightmare all around, I think, for the neighbors and also for the Land Trust. We want to be good neighbors. We want to get this done. We have the money to do it. We want to fix this problem.
I have a question about the plan. Now that we were able to see the details, it looked like the apron was 10 feet of paving, but I heard it's going to be 14. Okay. Perhaps when
Margaret,
yeah.
Under the highway standards, it's required to be a 14-foot paved apron. So that's what's going to be the dimensions.
Okay. Might I suggest that that when the applicant comes back with the fencing plan, that perhaps details like that just be checked and make sure that they're all correct? That would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mike, I wanted to ask a procedural question in terms of this project, where it is in terms of the rest of the town regulations. Is that something I can ask you now, or do we need to close the public hearing?
No, you can ask me right now.
Okay. If you could please tell us, where we are with other where the application is with the other regulatory agencies, that'd be helpful.
So they have not applied to the other regulatory agencies, mainly because they need the certificate of appropriateness first before they can go anyplace else. So their next stop's going to be the Inland Wetlands Commission, which is going to deal with the environmental issues, which is going to deal with drainage. and just the whole fact that you're working within 100 feet of mapped inland wetland soils and a water course. So a lot of the environmental aspect of this activity will be reviewed by the Conservation Commission. After the Conservation Commission, it will have to go to the Zoning Commission, because a portion of it's going to be filling and grading in the floodplain, which will trigger a public hearing with the Zoning Commission. So you're the first stop.
Okay. And it is our purview to review the visual qualities of this primarily. It is not our purview to comment on draining and issues like that. Am I right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. So we've heard a lot tonight, and so I'd like to open it up to the commissioners' comments and questions. Whoever would like to lead off.
It's a tough one. I appreciate that, they're coming to us with a full plan, more or less. I think when they came back 4 years ago, one of my major objections was that, we didn't know what this phase 2 was going to be. And so I appreciate that they've been willing to allow us a preview of that and the ability to vote on it. I guess from a visual standpoint, if the paved apron is a requirement, if we're going to allow it, I don't see it as any different from what already exists within the district. And I think that gravel, as opposed to additional pavement, is also, from a visual standpoint, something that would be preferable to additional asphalt. So, and I guess my sense is too that it will, if the trees along the street remain to the extent possible, the visual impact from the street will be mitigated by the vegetation surrounding it. So those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you.
I have to agree with Julie. There's so much information that's being presented, and obviously we've dealt with this whole drainage issue before, but that really is not our purview. So I'm kind of dealing with the chicken and the egg kind of thing. But again, I think the apron makes sense. It's keeping the runoff, but obviously we have no ability to stop the runoff. We have to rely on another commission to give the guidance on that. And yeah, so I from a visual perspective, I don't have a problem. I know that vegetation and landscaping is not in our purview, but I do like the idea of putting in the native plants. I think that's very helpful and appropriate. But anyway, that's my feeling.
Thank you, Diane. Heather, do you have questions, comments?
I appreciate everyone's thoughts on this, but within the parameters of our committee, I also agree that approve of the aesthetics and just the focus where we lie.
I do have one question though, just I think in terms of process and procedure. If we vote to approve the apron and the 10 space gravel lined driveway and 2-foot boulders at 8 feet on center as the plan proposes, Understanding that if they do a fence instead of boulders, they need to come back. Do they need to come back for anything that is removed from the scope? So, for example, in the discussion that a French drain might be sufficient and gravel won't be needed, would they have to come back to us to remove gravel from the plan?
No.
Okay.
No, they would have the ability to put the gravel there. If they don't do the work, the permit would expire within a year if you didn't do the work.
Okay.
Any other comments, Julie?
No. No, thank you.
I'm just wondering aloud about the visibility of the paved handicap spot, which is directly in the line of vision from the apron, and presumably it is located where it is to be closest to the trailhead. Wondered if there's any flexibility in the location of that spot, if it could be shifted over to the smaller area that's to the left. Mike, I don't know if you're following me. Do you know if there's any flexibility with that? I was just thinking, perhaps it would be less visible if it was tucked around that corner.
The way that the ADA regulations work, it's got to be at the shortest distance at the entrance to the facility as possible.
Okay.
Let me pull up the plans to maybe. Apologize, I closed that window.
No, take your time. It's fine.
And I'm looking at the plan, Marguerite, and right now it is a straight shot in, but I'm wondering if even shorter is if you came in and hung that left to the north.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, if that is a possibility, and does that improve anything? Also, just want to clarify from my count that this lot is sized for 11 cars, so that's 10 regular cars plus the handicap spot, just for the record.
So, Marguerite, just to clarify, you're looking to move it or recommend that the applicant move the ADA accessible parking space from its current location to the northern corner?
Yes, that's what I was wondering, if that would work.
Closer to Lucy Brook? I think that could work. They'd have to redo their parking space layout, but I think that can work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you just don't see it from the road quite as clearly. It's
right.
Buffered a little bit.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I'm just reviewing my notes here to see if there's anything we should discuss from members of the public. I certainly hear what folks are saying about their concerns with safety, with drainage, about the environmental impact of runoff into Lucy Brook. It's just that those issues cannot be addressed by our commission. And I'd like to just state for myself, I am a great supporter of the Simsbury Land Trust. I hike at many of the properties I have hiked here, and it is a great trail. And we would certainly like to see this resolved to everybody's satisfaction. My feeling is, however, I would prefer to approve this plan with the fence, or whatever barrier you are proposing. It would be very helpful to have that on the plan so we can consider it and pick it up at our next meeting, perhaps. Or if you need 2 months, that's fine.
So we'll submit the new plan with the fence and the another.
Sorry, this is a comment to the commissioners. Commissioners, do you agree? And is there anything else you would want to see added to the plan?
Is it possible at that point to see the updated plan, since we are looking at the old plan? I don't know if that's too much to do in a short amount of time.
So could I just clarify, as the commission, you're asking for new plans?
I'm not. No, I just didn't know if that's possible or not, Mike. I'm not going to ask it if it's unreasonable.
So unfortunately, the public hearing's closed. We can't ask anything else of the applicant. So your only option would be is approve or deny.
Okay.
Mike, do we have the option to vote to continue it at our next regular meeting?
No, actually, you don't. The 65 days expire the day before your next meeting. Because this application was filed with my office on May 4th, 65 days would put it to July 8th. Your next meeting is July 9th. We moved the date to July 9th because the first Thursday was July 2nd, assuming people would be away for the holiday that weekend.
Okay.
So unfortunately, we're in a position where we have to act on what we have before us.
Okay. So, Mike, I just need to understand what the applicant's position is. So the plan that was submitted in our packet is the current plan, and it currently shows 2-foot diameter boulders to serve as a barrier around this parking area. But I believe what the applicant was saying is that they're considering a fence instead. Is that correct? Or considering, or are they? Or do they want the option? Are they looking for us to approve both options or not?
They're considering a fence and prepared, should the application be approved, to come back with an application for the fence. Is what Marjorie said during the public hearing.
Okay.
And specifically, it was a cedar fence is what she indicated. However, obviously that could change when there's an application.
Okay.
So I guess to clarify for the commission, what you're looking to approve is your paved apron, your paved accessible parking spot, and a gravel driveway. Gravel parking area, let's say.
And the removal of 2 trees. Yeah.
Yep. And you can approve, let's say that you decide to approve the application, but you want a modification that the ADA accessible parking space is moved to the northern section of the parking lot. You can't make that modification. What you can't do is say, I want the plans to be revised to show that change.
Okay, so we can either approve and ask for that change, or we can deny.
Yep.
Okay. I'm really torn here.
What is your hesitation, Marguerite?
The location of the handicap space, whether that will work. What is it? What do other commissioners? I invite your input. No, I don't have a problem with the paved apron at all. I do not have a problem with a parking lot in the district. Rosedale Farms has a paved parking lot. That's not the issue. It's trying to make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible for this location in the district.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the apron. I don't have a problem. Again, I would prefer if you couldn't see the handicap parking, if we can turn that, but the apron I have no problem with. The gravel, if necessary, I'm fine with that. I'd rather have safe, limited parking.
Julie, do you have any further comments?
I actually have no objection with the plan as drawn. I think we need to be sensitive to the needs of accessible people and differently abled people. And if this spot is where it needs to be, then that's where it needs to be. And, I don't think there's, I think on balance, the visual effect of a paved spot there is de minimis considering the need.
Okay. Heather, do you have any more questions or comments?
I do not. I am not opposed to the plan as is.
Okay. So then we have, if I can raise one more issue, and that is signage. This application does not include any signage. So if any signage were to be added, they would need to come before the commission again. Mike, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Would one of the commissioners like to make a motion?
Just are we reading the motion for approval? Or are we just making?
You certainly could, and any modifications that we would require.
Well, are we in agreement over the request to modify the accessible parking lot?
The accessible space.
Yeah.
There are two of us who would prefer that it be moved if possible. I agree with you, Julie, that I certainly support the need for an ADA accessible space, and where if it needs to be there, okay, it can be there. If it's just as convenient to move it to that north corner, I would prefer to see it moved, but it's not a deal breaker for me either way.
Right. I agree too. Yeah.
I also agree with that as well. Whatever is the best accessible point for someone to use that spot, if they're equally accessible, then I think that to turn it works.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Oh, you go, Marguerite. You're good at this.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. All right. I've been talking a lot, but I'll give it a shot and chime in if I'm forgetting anything. So I will make a motion to approve application 20-02 of the Simsbury Land Trust as submitted, with the exceptions of the plan notes a 10-foot paved apron, but we understand that it is required to be a 14-foot paved apron. that will be asphalt paving. The other exception noted is we would prefer that the handicapped accessible spot be moved to the north end of the parking lot if possible, but we are not requiring that as part of this approval. We are approving the plan as noted with 2-foot diameter boulders that will demarcate the perimeter of the parking lot. If the applicant wishes to introduce a different barrier, a fence, then that will be a separate application. Additionally, if signage is required along the street or visible from the park, from the public way, that should be included as a separate application. Mike, anything else procedurally that we need to add here?
No, you're doing a great job.
Commissioners, anything else?
No, I'll second
Okay.
the motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Diane?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
And for myself, aye. So the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right. So the next item on the agenda, if we're ready to move on, is the referral from the Board of Selectmen for the potential open space acquisition at the Meadowwood site.
So, Madam Chairman, I'll be brief because we do have our consultant waiting to speak tonight.
Yes.
So let's.
Do you want
the Board
to?
of Selectmen. Why don't we have the consultant go first on the handbook update, and then we can revisit the referral. The referral
Okay.
should be a 5-minute conversation.
Okay.
So
do we need a motion to change the order on the agenda?
we should.
Okay.
We should do it proper.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion to move item 4, referral from the Board of Selectmen, and move up the general commission business, item 5, with the update of the handbook, so that we can hear from our consultant, FHI.
Second.
All right.
I think
And
Ken
we have-
and Stephanie are here.
I see Stephanie.
Yes,
Hello.
I am here. Yes. Hi, everybody.
Hello. Is Ken with us too?
Ken is here, and Rory Fitzgerald is also
Hi,
here. I actually, dare I say, I got a haircut today. My hair is now. I'm not on video. That's all I'll say. But I did get a haircut today.
I'm jealous. I desperately need a haircut. So.
Don't we all? Well, welcome to you. We are really excited to work with you. We've been talking about this handbook for at least 4 years, possibly longer. And so we're really excited to get the process started.
Great. And go, Stephanie.
I was just going to say, we've sent a few slides, but we certainly don't have to use them. We really tonight wanted to just start the conversation about this project and the handbook update, and start to hear from you all what you like about your existing handbook, and then what you envision for the update.
Sure.
So now we do have our slides. Do you want to go to the second one? I'm not sure. Mike, are you driving?
I'm driving right now. You're on key tasks. I passed.
Oh.
Or you always go back here.
No, we're still seeing the just the cover slide.
We're seeing the cover.
Oh, that's weird.
So while he's getting there, I think our first slide was just, and I think you already know that from us, who FHI is, and Stephanie will be sort of the lead project manager with myself supporting, and Rory Fitzgerald, who's also on the line for the project. So we were just, the first slide was just an introduction to FHI, which I think you know, we're in Hartford. Stephanie and I live in West Hartford, the other side of the mountain. And Francisco will be here. So that was slide one. We can go right to slide two. And we were just trying to ground this brief overview is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's freezing on me. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so this was simply the key tasks as we understand them. They were identified in the RFP and then transferred to our scope of work, but understand you would like a very visually rich, nice set of design guidelines that are helpful both to you and for potential applicants, residents of the district and the town as a whole, and address all the architectural styles and be consistent with all the state regulations, which we're familiar with, and I know you and the commission are, and Marguerite is very familiar with, and everything in one place, and just it's strange as it may say for a historical design guidebook, but we want to modernize it and make it visually pleasing and visually and user friendly and user usable. So that's this slide. Next slide. Our proposed schedule, as we put it here, was background research during the summer as we call it, sort of beginning now with this weather. Public workshop in the fall. We can see where we end up with that, whether it's going to be another Zoom meeting or public meeting face-to-face. We'll find that out, but then try to finalize everything late fall or really early winter, basically the end of this year. That would be the goal. If we can all be in agreement and you as a commission and will be, excited to work with us and excited to partner and review and give support and guidance. So we're ready to meet this time frame and get it forward. It's obviously requires a back and forth along the way. So I don't know, Marguerite, if you have questions or anyone else in the commission of the schedule, does that sound what you're hoping for?
Well, I would like to hear what the other commissioners have to say. I would really love to do a public workshop in person, if at all possible. I just feel like there's a better feeling, better connection with people in person, rather than virtually. But I guess I'm of two minds. Yes, I'm really excited to move it forward, and I don't want to postpone it unnecessarily. On the other hand, we've waited so long. It's just worth considering, at least in my book, to see, if we can hold off and kind of, see how the state guidelines shake out in the next few weeks as to whether we might be able to have a public meeting. I don't know if it's possible that, we could hold it outside or what, but that's just one comment I would have on the schedule.
And we would definitely support any or all of those options. I think the goal would be to figure out what we can do in the fall and however it can be. If there's such a strong desire that we have a face-to-face meeting and we can't do it in the fall, then obviously we could move along with task one, almost then hit a complete pause, which I'm not sure is the most advantageous option, but that could be an option if we need to and really extend things. But if we're not doing the fall, then you're talking,
right,
almost a 6-month sort of pause potentially, I would think. So
right, and that's not. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
How many people would you envision would be at the public workshop?
That's a question for you to tell us. I think to some extent, just seeing from your meetings today, you have a very interested and involved neighborhood in and of itself, the historic district. So I think many of those property owners may be interested in being involved, plus potentially a larger group.
I'm just thinking about as we get into, phase 3 of reopening the the state, I don't think it would be a problem in the fall. Again, even if we have to still be distancing, but inside, I'd hate to really put this on hold anymore. When one of your first questions was, what do you like about our current handbook? The only thing is really that we have one, but it's, but it is so, as you know, out of date. And my concern is also, as I'm watching homeowners' houses change hands in the district, so that they have something to get their hands on that's updated, timely, and helpful. So anyway, I would just go ahead hoping that we can do a public workshop in the fall. Let's be positive.
Yep. And we got some months to deal with that, and getting one organized is, 4 to 5 week lead time. I think you have a very targeted group of folks that would be make sure you're aware of it. You have mailing lists, so I think 4 to 5 week lead time. So if we can hold off for a while on that before making that decision. So that's the overall schedule as it is right now, working with you. And Michael, I think the next slide basically talks about what you hinted at of questions. And I'm not sure the energy you may have today, whether we wanted to get in a lot of detail at this point, or there's some general overview and there are just comments emailed to Michael, filtered through to us, or however you may want to think about this. I'm not sure your energy level at this point,
So why don't we do that? If anyone has comments or questions that they'd like to on any of these three subjects, send them to me and I will share them with Ken and company.
Okay, so you don't want any input tonight?
Well, no, you're welcome to have input right now, but I'm just saying in general, after tonight's meeting.
Okay.
We don't have to be exhaustive tonight because we're already exhausted.
Yep. Yeah, we all are. But I did take some time to look at the options that you had presented. You had sent links to a number of different types of guidelines, and if you don't mind, I'll just give you 2-minute summary of my thoughts. I kind of concur with Diane about our existing handbook. We have one, which is great. The one thing that I do like about it, though, is the summary history of the area. I think that's a nice touch. Not all handbooks have that, and I like that. It certainly needs to be updated, but I would like to keep that in our new handbook. I think back in 2016, we really liked the Windsor handbook more than any other, which they produced in-house. Actually, that's probably the one that at least at that time we were thinking would be a good guideline. I liked in the Nashville guidelines that you sent. I really liked the section on meeting guidance, telling applicants how to prepare for a meeting. Both applicants and people coming to speak about an application. I thought that was excellent, as well as their top 10 reasons to save windows, 10 ways to green your home, those kind of resources. All good.
Great. Well, that was the nice part of. I'm one to always beg, borrow, and steal, and people like from other examples is the best way than to say, well, I kind of am thinking of this. So that's very helpful. And for others, if you have other things that stand out, please just let us know because we can modify, borrow exactly, and quote and such. So
I was pretty amused to see that Madison's guidelines used almost all of the drawings that Simsbury had. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. Marguerite, were you able to get to the Fairfield handbook?
I was not. That link is broken.
Oh, right. Okay. I have a printed copy. So if we don't have one downloaded, I can scan it and send it.
We do have that.
There's a PDF of it in our folder.
Excellent. Okay.
You can send that.
Okay, great.
It's quite meaty. It's over 100 pages, but it has some really nice elements. So.
Okay, great. Any other commissioners have comments?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, well, we can move on.
Great. We'll continue to be in touch with Michael and folks, and look forward to working ongoing with you for this.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we will leave now.
Thanks for joining us tonight. All right, well, shall we move on now to the referral from the Board of Selectmen for the potential open space acquisition at the Meadowwood site?
Do we need a motion on that? Yes, move forward. Yeah, second.
Oops, I'm sorry. No, you don't need a motion on it. You already amended your agenda.
Okay.
So the Trust for Public Lands has approached the town about doing a partnership for purchasing the Meadowwood subdivision, which is the development is off of Hoskins and Firetown and County Road. I'm going to pull up the plans and show you and explain why this was shared with this commission. Go ahead, Julie.
Mike, is there any reason why I might need to recuse myself from this conversation?
So there will be funding from SHPO that's being provided, grant funding.
Right. I mean, it's not coming out of my checkbook, but it is coming out of my office.
Yeah, I don't, unless you feel uncomfortable sitting in this, I don't see an issue with you sitting on this portion of the meeting.
Okay.
So
I'm not directly involved in it, so this is very much a learning experience for me too. So
that's perfect.
Okay.
You're not involved with it, so it doesn't matter. So I have this up on the screen now and hope everyone can see it. Meadowwood was the residential subdivision affordable housing application that was approved by the courts in 2008. Calls for the construction of 296 new homes and the demolition of several historic tobacco barns. So part of this, the reason why this is before the Board of Selectmen forward this to you is, and I'll go down a slide here and I'll come back to the map. The State Historic Preservation Office is committed to providing $500,000 in grant funding for the preservation of some of the tobacco barns that are on Firetown Road. And mainly because of the cultural significance that these tobacco barns serve. As many of you may know, during 2 summers, Martin Luther King worked in these fields. He lived in the dormitory, which is now used to be off of Scarborough Lane, which is just south of the Firetown Road portion of the project, or was just south. I should not say is. That dormitory was demolished in the 80s, unfortunately. But those barns that are on Firetown Road, the ones that are remaining, would be preserved through this historic preservation grant, along with some interpretive signage and something commemorating Martin Luther King's involvement in Simsbury. So that's why this is here tonight. The Board of Selectmen basically wanted a referral and input from this commission. There are other barns that are out on these properties. Some of them, however, unfortunately, have fallen into disrepair. The ones on Firetown Road that are remaining were the ones which, as the Trust for Public Lands was speaking to various state agencies, they felt had the most historical significance due to, like I said, just where he worked. Or or where we think he worked. That's the other thing. We don't know which fields he physically was on, but we're assuming this is closer to where he was versus where the solar farm is being constructed as we speak. Does anyone have any questions?
Mike, this is Marguerite. Yeah, I have a question about the barns that SHPO is giving the grant to preserve. So is that the row of 5 tobacco barns on the south side of Firetown, west of Scarborough Road?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's great.
I mean, like I said, it's not saving all of the barns that are on these properties, but it'll preserve probably some of the more iconic ones that are on the road. The other barns that are on the property, especially the ones like, for example, north of Cliffside, that is, you can't see these barns from the road, and they are in poor state.
And I believe many of these barns have already been documented through a state level documentation as part of the Meadowood project. Am I right, Mike? I believe there's some documentation. Yeah. Okay.
As you remember our days in New Britain.
Indeed, I do. So the $500,000 from SHPO, what work would be done on these 5 barns?
Restoration and preservation. That's what we've been discussing.
Will that amount cover everything that needs to be done?
That's so far, based on the conversations we've had, yes, that's what we've identified. Should be enough to do the work that they're looking. Long term, there may be some maintenance. However, that's going to be, that's a conversation at a later date.
Right.
So, Mike, can you just? I wasn't quite sure what the board was asking us to comment on. Is it just the preservation of the barns, or is it the plan for purchasing the land? What are we? Yeah.
Your role is as part of the intent of the purchase is, from your perspective, historical preservation of the barns. Do you feel that this is appropriate actions that they're doing and support it?
But what we're saying is, we're supporting the preservation of these 5 barns, but we're okay with the demolition of the remaining barns that are, while not associated with Martin Luther King Jr., are historic to the character of Simsbury as well. So are we just commenting on the ones that are being preserved, or are we commenting on all of them?
Well, what you could say, you could add that comment in that we are supportive of the efforts as submitted, and would like that the group, meaning TPL in the town, investigate ways to preserve all the barns on the properties, in addition to those that have been identified.
Okay.
Does that make?
Yeah, I think, obviously the work that's being done to preserve the sheds associated with Martin Luther King Jr.'s time here. It's my understanding that many of the barns that kind of pepper the landscape are associated with that whole African American migration up to Simsbury, those colleges up to Simsbury during that time. So even though they're not necessarily associated with Martin Luther King Jr., they're associated with this period in time that is, where these historic Black colleges students were coming up and working in these fields. And I think that that's significant for civil rights in the country in general. And I also think that just outside of that whole civil rights commentary, these tobacco barns are important to the development of Simsbury in general and the character that Simsbury maintains as an agricultural community at one point. So, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't advocate for the preservation of all of that. So that would be my 2 cents on that.
My question with that though is that 500,000 is to preserve the 5 barns, and then we add the others in as our thought. We really don't know the condition of them, and are they repairable? We don't know the condition of the ones that they're saying are falling apart.
Well,
so that entail to preserve them if, in fact, they're just in such bad condition that perhaps you can't.
I'm just wondering if there isn't a way for us to capture them in recognition, without mandating their preservation. That's all I'm kind of throwing out there is, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention all of the historic resources,
A couple of comments. I just want to note that I believe that all of the ones that all of them have been documented with through state level documentation that I believe would be in SHPO's office. Question to Mike: the other barns that are proposed to be demolished, is there a plan, Mike, that shows where they are? Am I looking at it? I can't quite. Yes, I think I am.
Yes, you are. And let me see if I can zoom in on it. No, sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
That's okay. Can you mouse over and maybe point?
Do you see that? Do you see a box I'm making right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So those barns there, unfortunately, those would most likely be demolished. And also what's difficult about this area here is it's associated with, so that's your historic area, this little square down here. That's your SHPO area, your historic preservation. The area that's outside of it, the larger piece, the kind of pie shaped, that's this one, the larger one there. Mm-hmm. That's associated with the DEP open space grant, along with, this larger piece here. The DEP open space grant kind of actually has a prohibition on having structures on the property. So that's something that we're trying to iron out those details as we speak. But I think to Julie's point, one of the things you can say is, you could say yours is supportive of the concept. You fully support the preservation of the barns on Firetown Road, and you'd ask that the town investigate if other barns, if possible, can be preserved on these properties. The only one, I just will say, this barn here is not historically significant. That was built in the, I'm trying to remember now, 70s. It was a experimental drying barn. It was not like the other ones. Because I've actually been inside that structure along with the other ones. The other ones, it was probably about 5 years ago I was in the other ones.
Well, Mike, as a child born in the 70s, we're getting closer and closer to 50 years of age, thankfully.
I don't take it wrong. I'm sorry.
All getting closer to being historic.
I'm not too far behind you.
Oh, some of us are well past it now.
Hush, hush.
Oh, I'm among
So
them.
I mean, that's that's a suggestion I have for you. Is like what Julie said. You could add that language in there. I think that you're doing your job by doing so.
Okay. So you need us to draft a letter?
Actually, I can draft a letter. We can draft a letter for you. I can email it to the chair should the board be supportive of it. All it would probably need from the board is a motion on action of this referral and then authorize staff to work with the chair.
Okay, people, I'm exhausted. Somebody else make this motion, please.
So we're making a motion to have to move this staff to draft a letter.
Could I maybe make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Okay. You can make a motion to send a positive referral back to the Board of Selectmen that the commission is supportive of the preservation of barns along Firetown Road, and that the commission would like the town and Trust for Public Lands to investigate on potential ways that other barns throughout the project can be preserved.
Done. What he said.
Yeah.
So
Karen, wait, more importantly, Karen, did you get it? As long as Karen got it. Okay.
All right. Do we need to vote on it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous, ladies
This
and
was a
gentlemen.
long meeting, you guys.
Not kidding. We have to approve the minutes and then we're done.
I'm out of
Sorry.
shape. I'm out of shape for these long meetings.
Oh, I know.
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thanks, everybody. It was a long, hard meeting. It really was. So I'm going to make a motion to adjourn and say goodnight.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Night all.
All right. Thanks, everybody.